Hello, everybody. How's it going today? Yes. I know. I have to be the bad guy and interrupt all the conversations. Gonna do a quick sound check. Can everyone in the back hear me right now? I know, all the people having a conversation. Thumbs up. You can hear me? People in the back? Great. Thank you very much. I know I have to bully everyone to stop their conversations. There'll be lots of time for great conversations and meeting a great community after the event, but we're gonna get started pretty quickly here. So we always start with a land acknowledgement, and we acknowledge that the land that we're meeting on is the traditional territory of nations including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This whole thing, the TPMA, is a volunteer-run organization. It is powered by passionate people that give a lot of time and energy into making a product community in our city that we can all be proud of. So these are just some of the names of people that are involved in the event, but there's many more people behind the scenes. So maybe just a quick round of applause for all the volunteers that are making TPMA possible. If you're interested in volunteering, there's always roles that are posted on the volunteer page on our website. And so please reach out. We also have one of our volunteer coordinators, Edouard, here. And so you can ask him all the questions. Sponsors. So the TPMA, again, is sponsored by some amazing organizations. Two right up front, Martin Bassett Associates, who's an amazing recruiter specializing in the tech scene, but product especially, and Lightster, who helps product managers and designers test features, prototypes, and do competitive analysis. So please check out both of them. They're both awesome organizations. If you're interested in sponsoring the TPMA, please reach out to sponsorships. What does sponsorship look like? It could be collabing on an event. It could be running a special program with our members. We've got close to 3,000 members now, and that's an audience of really amazing product people that are waiting for your message. So get in touch. Now, tonight's event is, our main sponsor is Intuit. And this place is amazing. So first off, a quick round of applause for the Intuit team for making such an amazing space. Brian from Intuit, would you like to say a few quick words?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us in our awesome, relatively new site. We opened up here a year and a half ago. We were previously in Mississauga. Some of you may have remembered. We had a brief TPMA Mississauga chapter, which was ill-fated because COVID happened a month later. But a little bit tidbit of history. I've been involved in the TPMA for a number of years. It's awesome to see the growth, like the evidence is here under Andrew and the whole current chairs for TPMA, so it's awesome. Very quickly, I am hiring for a senior PM role. Some of you may have seen the listing on LinkedIn and stuff, and some of you probably pinged me already. Looking for a strong senior PM, dual-sided network experience and customer-facing app experience is a plus. FinTech is a plus. So you may not be able to get in touch with me here. I'm probably going to have a few conversations, but definitely ping me on LinkedIn as well. Make sure you apply because I'm reviewing everything with my TA partner over these weeks. So, but again, thank you all for coming and looking forward to an awesome event tonight.
Perfect. Okay, excuse me. On to the main event, product pricing and monetization. We wanted to do a pricing event because, I don't know about you, but pricing gives me anxiety. This is a task that is often put on the product team's shoulders and is not always something that we have a lot of experience on. Sometimes you get to work with new parts of your organization that you don't always get a chance to work with. And it's a very tough, challenging problem. And so we've got two amazing speakers with us tonight to take us through a few different sides of things. So we're going to be collecting audience questions, both for the online audience, hello online audience, and our in-room audience from Slido. So if you ever view Slido, you can submit questions, you can upvote questions that you think should be asked. We'll be showing these links a few times throughout the presentation, so don't worry about that, but give you a second to take a look real quick. Okay, so on to our first speaker. So John Kotowski is the co-founder of PricingSaaS, a pricing intelligent company that assists SaaS operators in making better pricing decisions. Before establishing this company, John worked as a product leader, building and monetizing software at several different companies, including Format, Tulip, and Chango. There, he learned about the importance of not only creating products that users want, but also ones that they're willing to pay for, which is the viable part of viability, which ultimately led him to starting PricingSaaS. So I'm going to hand over to John and take us away.
Testing. Okay, excellent. This is amazing. Thank you so much for putting this together. I was just telling Andrew, I used to come to these events many years ago. I'm old. And it was literally like maybe 15, 20 people sitting in a small room. So this has really grown. This is really amazing. I live in Ottawa, so this gave me also an opportunity to come to Toronto. I miss the city. Ottawa is awesome, but it's boring. It's great for raising a family, but I love coming to the city. So thank you for having me. All right. So let's get started. So I've been involved in pricing for probably well over 10 years. And I still find pricing hard. There's no formula for pricing. You can do your quantitative, qualitative research, but at the end of the day, until you put it out there, until somebody puts in that credit card or signs that PO, there is like, you don't really know. And even if somebody does, you still don't know if it's fully optimized. And the challenge is that historically, if you're a pricing or a SaaS operator, and if you're trying to figure out your own pricing, you only have two choices. You either kind of do it by yourself. Sometimes the product team has to do it, and you kind of stumble through it. And you're like, maybe you read an article, maybe you run some surveys. So that's choice number one. Choice number two is you hire a consultant. Consultants are not cheap. I don't know about Scott. But consultants can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. They can cost $1 million if you're hiring a firm like Simon Kucher. So this is why we created PricingSaaS. We wanted to give people another choice. PricingSaaS is a pricing intelligence platform for B2B SaaS companies. We track over thousands of pricing pages. We've been doing this for over a year, and our users use those insights to basically cheat. We call it a cheat code because they get to learn from industry leaders, they get to learn from peers, they get to learn from their competitors. So it's a bit of a cheat code, but again, it's another way of figuring out pricing. We also do PLG audits. So these are very quick, rapid, one-week PLG audits. We work exclusively with PLG companies. Again, these are fairly affordable. If you run a PLG company, let's talk after this event. We can probably help you grow some revenue. All right, but let's talk about trends. Not surprisingly, one of the biggest trends that we've observed tracking pricing pages over the last 12 months is related to AI pricing. Almost every SaaS company over the last year has added some AI capability to their stack. What's interesting is how they've been pricing them. Some companies are getting really creative. So over the next few slides, we'll look at a few examples of different companies and how they've priced AI, and I'll talk about pros and cons of each one. Okay, so we'll start with Rike. So Rike is a project management company, and just like all those other companies, they added a whole bunch of AI features, and in fact, they've integrated AI so deeply into their platform, they had to add a whole section that you see here on the screen to their pricing page that lists out all the capabilities that are now possible with AI. Now, what's interesting is how they priced it. And if you look at the highlighted area where the arrow is pointing, they said no extra cost. Okay, so that means every plan that they have, and they have tiered-based pricing, now includes AI, which is great, except that AI costs money. Unlike other features, most of these AI features are now built on top of OpenAI, or maybe Google or Anthropic, which has a cost associated with it. So now, in terms of monetizing these features, they're not only not making extra revenue, now it costs them money, so it's hitting their margins. So not the best strategy, although surprising, or maybe not surprisingly, this is one of the most common pricing patterns we've seen over the last year when it comes to AI. It's easy. You just include it in different bundles. I like to call it lazy because, again, all you do is you add it to a few plans. But again, in terms of monetization, not great for revenue growth. So what can you do better? Otter. Otter is an AI note-taking company. I don't know if some people may have used it. They've done something similar. So they've always had AI, but as you can see in the box in the lower picture, they've added some AI features as well. But in this case, to monetize, they've also increased prices. So you can see $8.33 went to $10. That's a 20% increase. So that's great. Now, again, you're paying a little bit more, but at least you're making 20% from those pro users, and the new pro users is also paying you 20%. Okay, so this is better. Now you're actually making some money off of these new AI features. The only challenge is, what if I don't care about chat, AI chat? Now I'm forced to pay 20% extra for something I may not necessarily want. So what else can we do? Loom. Everybody knows Loom. The other way of pricing AI, and this is actually pretty common among seat-based companies. So if you're pricing per user, per seat, or in case of Loom, per creator, what you can do with add-on pricing is basically price it per extra seat. So in this case, it's extra $4. They price their plans at $12.50, extra $4 is an extra 33%. Not bad, not bad. It's better with margins. It provides revenue growth opportunities. However, the challenge is you now have to convince somebody to actually add this to their plan. So this works. However, the most important thing with this strategy, if you're pricing AI as an add-on, is you have to make sure people get to experience that value. Just because you're slapping an AI label on something, it doesn't mean people want it. In fact, AI has been so abused as a term over the last 12 months. People are sort of like tuned out. It's like, oh, AI, whatever. Everybody has AI. So again, they've added a whole page explaining what it is. But really, if you want to upsell somebody to pay that extra $4 per license, you really have to put it in their heads. And we've seen a few strategies. One of them is you give it to everybody for a limited period of time. Sometimes you call it beta. It's like, oh, we have this new AI beta feature. Everybody gets it. And then after a few months, you turn it off and say, now you have to pay up if you really want it. You can also do trials. So you can say, hey, you can try this for free. But again, you have to let people experience this, or at minimum, at least record a video explaining the benefits of using this feature. Another company that is doing the same thing, or add-on based AI pricing, is Notion. What's interesting about this example is they have this toggle that the arrow is pointing at, and you can see the animation. When you toggle this, you can see the price going up and down. So their AI add-on is priced at $8, which is quite significant because their base price, the Plus plan, is $8. So as soon as you move the toggle, that would become $16. Nice, 100% price increase. But again, the challenge is you have to make sure people get to experience this. What's interesting about Notion is they actually ran an experiment a few weeks ago, and we know this because we tracked this data, and they had this on by default, and now it's off by default. I think it affected their conversion rate, so people didn't like the higher price point. All right, there's a couple of different other ways we're going to look at when it comes to AI pricing. The next one is usage-based. So this is from a company called Grammarly. They help you write better copy. So they have their standard tiers, free, premium, business, and they've added their Gen AI feature set. And what they've done is instead of just saying it's either on or off, they actually put limits around this. So you can see 100, 1,000 prompts, 2,000 prompts, depending on the plan you're at. So this is nice as well, provides some expansion opportunities. If you're on premium, you hit 1,000 prompts, maybe you prompt a lot, then you upgrade to business. The challenge with this approach is if you're on business and you hit 2,000, now what? So now you have to potentially provide add-ons. You can buy more prompts. It gets pretty complicated pretty fast. So not a bad approach, but again, it can get pretty complex pretty quick. If you do this approach, I highly recommend you invest in a good billing system, such as Orb, there's Stig, there's other platforms that help you manage this complexity. Asana, similar approach, usage-based pricing. They have a whole bunch of features you can see on the left-hand side, from smart fields to smart digests, a whole section on the pricing page. What's interesting about this example is because there's so much you can do with Asana AI, they called it Asana Intelligence. And in terms of usage-based metric, they said it's actions. But who the heck knows how many actions do you need, right? So you've got like 150 on starter, 1500 in advanced. Who knows if that's a lot, if that's enough, if you need more. So this is a bit of an issue when it comes to usage-based pricing. Again, it can work, but it's tricky. Okay, I'll show you guys the last example, and this is my favorite. Intercom. So I think everybody here knows Intercom, client service platform. They deal with support tickets. And what they've done is 99 cents per resolution. So that means you only pay when their Fin, I think they call it Fin AI chatbot, actually resolves the ticket. This is nice. This is called outcome-based pricing. So that means if the AI engages with your customer, but the ticket doesn't get resolved, you don't pay anything. But if it does get resolved, you pay. Now this is nice because now if the chatbot resolves 1,000 tickets per week, you charge them $1,000. That may seem like a lot of money, but if you think about, so like, what would you do otherwise if you have to hire 2 extra support people to handle that 1,000 tickets per week? That could be $120,000, $140,000. So all of a sudden, $1,000 seems like a good deal. So this is my favorite. The only challenge is it doesn't always work. So think about Loom, think about Reich. You can't really do outcome-based pricing. It's really hard because you really have to find a simple metric that works. All right. How are we doing on time, Andrew? Okay. All right, so that's AI. And then the next section will be about price changes. So we've seen a lot of changes in AI over the last 12 months. Next, I'll talk about pricing changes. We see a lot of different pricing changes. What's interesting is that some companies are getting really creative when it comes to pricing changes. And I'll walk through the examples. So the first one is Mixpanel. This is pretty straightforward. Price increase. They changed their prices from 20 to 24 bucks a couple of weeks ago. Pretty straightforward. In terms of price increases, what we've seen over the last 12 months, 10 to 20% seems the average. Again, this one is 20%. Some companies are lowering prices. So OpenAI has been lowering prices quite consistently over the last 12 months. You can see they charge per token, and their per token pricing went down. So with price changes, obviously raising prices, you get more revenue. However, lowering prices helps you gain market share. OpenAI was first to market with their chatbot, but obviously there's a lot of competitors entering the space, Google, Anthropic, and others. So again, price changes don't always have to go up. They can go down to help you win market share. Here's another one from Squarespace. What's interesting about this one is they actually did a combination of price changes. So if you look at the top screenshot, you have 23, 27, 49. So they went from 27 to 28, 49 to 52. But in terms of the business plan, they changed the annual savings. So what this effectively means, they've raised the price on the monthly plan, not the annual plan. This is actually interesting because now all of a sudden, your monthly is more expensive, which makes the annual seem better. So for people who are subscribing to the entry-level plan, you're hoping to get more on annual plans. Annual plans in SaaS are usually better retention rates, better cash flow. Okay, this is an interesting one. So this is Airtable. So they did something really interesting. This is a few months ago, but really good example nonetheless. So they used to have these 2 plans, Plus and Pro, 10 and 20 bucks. Nice. And then all of a sudden they scrapped those 2 plans and they introduced Team and Business at 20 and 45. If you look at those rates, that's 100% on the first tier and over 100% increase on the second one. Now, what they've done is instead of doing a straight up price increase, they actually changed the names of the plans as well as some of the metrics and features. So they're not actually the same plans, But again, they replace their 2 paid plans with another set of paid plans that are much more expensive. Now, this is not simple. This is a fairly involved project because typically what you do in this case is you'd start charging new customers the new pricing. So any new customer goes on team and business, and then slowly over time, you start migrating your existing customers to those new plans, and you try to do it in such a way to avoid churn. So you don't want those customers saying, hey, this is too expensive. You want to retain them. But if you think about the magnitude of this change, this is over 100% revenue growth from those 2 segments. So in this case, it might be quite worth it, assuming, again, there are people willing to pay $45 for that business plan. Okay, this is my last slide in terms of examples. This is from Canva. So they're doing some crazy stuff right now. So Canva has a freemium. They have a plan for individuals and for teams. But what's crazy is the test that they're running, and this is a live test. If you go to Canva pricing page right now, you can, and you refresh your browser enough times, or you try different browsers, you'll see that 4 different permutations. And what's crazy is, so like the vast differences in pricing. So on the top left, $159.90 is sort of like version 1, which is almost $160 per person. And what they're playing around with next is the number of minimum people, so minimum 3 people in the next one. So you can buy it for $99, but you have to buy at least 3 seats. So now you're spending $300. Next, you have the 120 version, but you need to buy at least 2 seats. And the last one is $300 for 5 people. So if you calculate the per seat pricing on the last one, that works out to $60 per seat compared to $160 per person. That is some crazy delta between prices. But it's, again, so they're running this test. Some companies do run A/B tests when they release prices. You have to have a lot of traffic coming to your site, a lot of customers to get sort of like meaningful data out of those tests. But I've seen quite a few. Apollo is always running A/B tests. Even Squarespace is running this as an A/B test. So there are companies doing A/B tests. One thing you have to be careful with is in Europe, if you operate in Europe, you can't do that. That's price discrimination. There's laws against it. So you can't really sell the same product for 2 different prices to different customers. All right, so that was my last example. I do a lot of LinkedIn posts. We have a product called PricingSaaS.com. If you head over to PricingSaaS.com, we will ask you to put in your email address. You'll start getting weekly emails with a lot more examples. If you are running a PLG company and need some help growing your revenue, let me know. But that was the last one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. Grab a quick drink of water. You can sit on the side and then we'll. Okay, we will have tons of questions. We'll get to the questions for John when we get to the Q&A portion of the evening. But next, we've got Scott, our final presenter of the evening. So Scott Millar is a CPA, a CMA, and the founder of Millar Advisors, a B2B pricing and commercialization consultancy with a specialty in software and digital solutions. So over the last 25 years, he has held various roles as the head of global pricing with global technology companies and has conducted more than 200 pricing initiatives. He's also a published pricing author and a speaker at best-in-class pricing practices. So please welcome Scott to the stage and his presentation, A Framework for Pricing and Offer Design in the Digital Era.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Everybody hear me okay? Wow. Yeah, John had mentioned I'd been at a TPA event probably about good 5+ years ago, and it's great to see that it's expanded. I really enjoy following John, by the way. If you don't follow John on LinkedIn, I really enjoy his posts because it really kind of gives some good discussions around trends that you're seeing and whatnot. So today's topic, I'm going to be talking about a framework for pricing offer design in the digital era. So we're going to go through a framework, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about some tools that I use fairly regularly as well to help me develop some pricing and packaging solutions for various companies. So this is me. Feel free to reach out as well on LinkedIn. I definitely don't post as much as John does, but I'll post every now and then and to provide some white papers and whatnot. In terms of my background, who I work with, so I work with a variety of different companies. Most of them are B2B software companies in the mid-market, which is usually like that $10 million to $200 million area, but also hardware as a service companies as well, where you're seeing a lot of hardware solutions integrating some software and digital solutions as well. So just a quick survey of the audience. How many folks are doing in the B2B business, their companies in B2B? Yeah, quite a bit. How about business to government? Those are fun. And then software, just to get an idea, okay? Anybody doing like hardware, software, hardware as a service? Oh, interesting, great, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting area. So I do have some, if you need additional resources and whatnot, we can provide this afterwards. There's some links. I do contribute to a variety of different books as well in terms of topics on pricing. And then I work closely with a society called the Professional Pricing Society. So if you're looking to expand your network and look at best practices around pricing as well, it's a great association that's based out of the US as well. Okay. So we'll have three key topics. The first one's going to be just talking a little bit about the B2B digital era. The next one that we've got is digital pricing framework. I'm going to give you a bit of a checklist as well that you can take back and use that within your own organization. And the last part here, I'm going to talk about pricing tools, tips, and then a variety of case studies as well. So how much, we got like 20 minutes though. This is what I always do. I always put too much content in and then I start humming through it as fast as I can. But we'll try and get through as much as we can as well, at least the key, the important parts. So product managers, holy cow, you guys do a lot. I mean, especially in this digital era, like when I work with product managers, you have to do it all, not just worry about the product, your roadmap. You're getting pulled into sales calls, doing demos, oh my gosh. And then on top of that, you've got pricing as being a key responsibility that falls on your plate a lot. So how many folks that it's like pricing is also a responsibility in your domain? Yeah. Okay. And so I find that in a lot of cases, pricing kind of falls on the product teams, but it's usually what I find, it's kind of like another activity. It's on the back burner, right? I'll worry about that at some point. It's unfortunate, right? Because at the end of the day, your company's all about making a product and selling that product and monetizing that product as well. And so you'd be surprised how many people figure out on the fly what they want to do with pricing and they put that in the market and see what sticks. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a bit of a framework. And this framework is going to treat pricing more as a process, right? So it's not us trying to figure out what's that crystal ball answer, the silver bullet answer to what we're looking for. Pricing's a process, okay? And so think about pricing as being a process. And for much larger organizations, sometimes it could be a bit of a journey as well. So it's not something you could flick a switch on and all of a sudden you're best-in-class pricers in your company. It's like, hey, maybe we can take baby steps over the next 2 or 3 years and get to a highly mature company in terms of our pricing processes too. So there's a lot of innovation going on in the B2B world right now. Of course, who's not hearing talks about artificial intelligence? But there's so many other areas as well that we're seeing some real high innovation happening. And there's a lot of questions around this innovation saying, well, how are we going to monetize this? Do we bundle it, as John was showing? Do we bundle it in for free? Can we monetize this? Can we use it as an upsell or an add-on for some of our current customers as well? Like these are the challenges and the questions that come to the team. Of course, the executives are looking at saying we're investing in this innovation. So with this investment, we want to make sure that we're going to be monetizing this as well. So how do we go about doing this? And like I said, pricing's a process. So let's treat it like that. We're not looking for a crystal ball to give us an answer. And so here's a bit of a framework, and I call this framework the digital pricing framework. This is like 25 years of my life put into one slide. That's it. And the way that I treat this framework is, again, pricing's a process, is that we start with offer design. And offer design is all about value-based pricing, not cost plus. How many people do cost plus in their company? I see 2 hands. Shame on you. I'm just kidding. So the approach for value-based pricing, and I'll look into this in detail on the next slide here, but with offer design, we take a value-based pricing approach. But again, pricing is a process. So even when you come up with offer design, within your own organization or even channel partners, now you have to enable and make sure that the sales reps know how to sell the value, but link the pricing conversation to that value as well. and your channel partners. So once you've got the enablement piece ready to go, then of course it's the execution part. And every department within our organization, I find, is touched by pricing. Like think about the legal team, the contracting team, especially with software and how you word all of this. So you got legal operations, software, you got the sales teams, you've got customer success teams. Everybody's going to be impacted. Finance, even the finance teams are going to be impacted by as well. So execution, everyone's going to have little mini projects within their own company when you change your pricing packaging strategy. And they all have to have those mini projects aligned so that you hit a certain milestone when you do that date of execution. Okay, systems. John mentioned the billing system as well. I mean, some companies come up with the best pricing strategies in the world. They're like, hey, we can't bill for this. We got to invest in the system. 6 months later, now maybe we can. So it's this cycle of continuous improvement that we need to focus on. And we live in the digital era, right? And so you got to be looking at your pricing minimum once a year when you do your annual strategic planning review, because the market changes so quickly these days. Innovation's happening. Customers' perceptions and value perceptions change over time very, very quickly as well. So that's why, minimum once a year, but anytime you're having new innovation, new features and whatnot, you have to take a step back and say, how are we going to price this? How are we going to package it? How are we going to monetize this properly? So the first part of the framework is really centered around the value-based pricing approach around offer design. And I like to use this analogy. It's skydiving, right? So if you're leading this conversation with your group, I mean, feel free to use this analogy. I find it works. Sometimes you got to strap on your parachutes as a team, jump out of an airplane, and we got to start high level. So what I mean by high level is we got to figure out the overall strategy. Strategy meaning what's the objectives that we need to do with our pricing packaging? What's our segmentation? What's our value proposition messaging? Where's our differentiation? That's the high level stuff, right? So sometimes a lot of companies will jump into the pricing piece, but they haven't figured that part out first, and then they wonder why their pricing structures collapse, because you're missing the strategy part first. So that's at the 10,000 foot level. Then we're going to come down to the next 2,000 foot level, and this is our price value analysis and purchase behavior analysis. So this is kind of where you're getting that zone saying, hey, you know what? Based on our value, we should probably be in a range of like 280K to 400K. I mean, this is an example of like enterprise customers. So sometimes a lot of market research or customer interviews, we'll talk a little bit about some research techniques here, can help you kind of figure out that price positioning. Then we come down to the 500 foot level, and this is where you start building out your rate cards. So for product-led companies, product-led growth companies, where you go online, you get a lot of what John was showing. It could be a good, better, best packaging, but in other B2B scenarios, it could be a little bit more complex to that. So you have a rate card that you don't necessarily post online. And the last part is all about financial analysis. Are we making money? Are we losing money? Hey, if we've got current customers that we have to migrate to our new plans, what's that difference that they were paying before? What they're going to be paying on those new plans when you do migration as well. So I'm going to try and make sure I see people behind the posts. So again, it's a process, right? And so this, I'm not going to go through every single box on this one, but again, this is like 25 years worth of work put into one slide again, but we're peeling back the onion. So we have our offer design enablement, execution. And with offer design, there's going to be a checklist of items that you can go through with your team. Some of these are going to be, of course, be more important than others. But especially once you get past the offer design phase to your enablement phase, this is the first thing I'll do is just kind of go through this checklist. What do we got to do to make sure the sales teams and our channel partners are ready to sell? Here's a checklist. Training plans, materials, communication plans. What's our marketing plan? What's the customer engagement plan? What kind of sales tools do we have the sales teams? How does their incentive plan change? We have compliance guidelines, contract compliance, and then we get into the PICO, what I call a pricing ecosystem. And that's all like people, processes, systems might change with your pricing structure. So again, this is kind of a toolkit for you, right? And so if you live in a world of B2B and you have it's a little bit more of a complex sales process in the background, there's a good checklist that you can bring up and just kind of go through it with your team as you go through each of the stages. All right. How are we doing? Good? Okay, so some pricing tools and toolkits. These are the ones that I come back to a lot. So the first one, what I'll do is I'll zone in on certain key areas in the digital pricing framework. The first one's going to be economic value analysis. This one's being used heavily, especially with AI, because I think with AI right now, sometimes you come up with something that's so new that nobody has it in the marketplace yet, so you have a little bit of first to market. There's not really a lot of competitors. And I'd have a scenario where the product team would come over and they'd say, okay, we've got this new idea, it's AI, we've got some enterprise customers that could really use it. Is it $20,000, $80,000, $200? We don't know. So I'd start off with this approach and just say, what's it doing, right? I mean, you're selling this to an executive or to a team. What are the executives saying? Why am I buying your software? What's it doing for us? It's either going to help us improve revenue, it's going to reduce costs, make us more productive, or mitigate risk as well, right? Usually it falls in those areas for economic value. So here's an example, most basic. It's like our product, we agreed that it could save you $2.5 billion per year. At our price of $375K per year, you get to receive 85% discount off the worth of the product to you. You're only paying 15% of what you get to save, right? So that's the crux of economic value. So here's an example or a case study. It was a company, this one company, they needed thousands and thousands of documents being read. So just imagine even in the legal world right now, they're going to have to read thousands and thousands to do their dispositions and whatnot. That takes a lot of junior analysts and junior legal folks to read through all those documents, but now we've got AI, right? And AI can look through all those documents and do a lot of this work, save a lot of time. So the team that was building this had that question of, okay, for this particular industry, it was brand new, it was very innovative. How do we price it? 20, 40, 100, 200? We don't know yet. So we went through an example to look at the benefits, the impact to the client. Then we wanted to quantify the financial value that it meant to them for buying the solution. And then we set our price relative to value. So this is just an example exercise of going through the team. So you're looking through X number of documents. How long does it take them today? How much staff do they have to hire to look through those documents? And if they bought our solution, how do those metrics and KPIs change? So we're trying to talk their language of what they're doing today and how we're helping their company make those savings. So just imagine the next part, quantify the value. Here's the number of staff they typically hire, almost 10. What do you pay them? And then if you use their software, you can reallocate those FTEs to other value-add activities instead. I don't like to say that it's cost reduction necessarily of FTEs, right? You can use them in a better way. And then here's kind of where we're getting to the home run. Oh, sorry. It should be a transparent thing. But I think it shows something like $45,000 in there. Anyways, so if we take the 15% of the savings, here's our pricing message. The annual savings you agree that you could obtain using this product is this amount at our price of, that should say something like 45,000. We'll fix that. So basically, that's the answer to the team when they were asking a question. Is it 10, 20, 80, 200? We don't know. For this particular scenario, around 45,000 was the sweet spot. And now the team had a value story to sell. It wasn't just going out saying our product's $45,000. The conversation has to be around the value, and then you link the price conversation to the value conversation. Do people, I mean, how many people do this really well in their company? I say like one hand in a, yeah, but how many people have salespeople that, it's all about like selling their solution, selling the value? Like, could they improve linking that price conversation to value? Okay, a lot more hands, yeah. Okay. Next part, another tool that I use a lot is customer insights research. And again, all we're trying to do is we're just trying to build up the confidence in our pricing and packaging strategies. And so how do we do that? We want to bring in some extra inputs from the market, the voice of the customer, right? We can either do it as a huddle, as a team around a table saying, what do you think and what do you think? Let's bring in a voice of the customer, can help reinforce that pricing strategy. So here's number 2. There's 6 ones that I usually go perform for customer research. One is the one-on-one client interviews. It's great. I mean, you're hearing that right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But it's not just pricing and packaging questions you're asking them. You're asking questions around like their buying journey. Who makes the decisions internally? How do you determine a budget for this? So you can get a lot of good other insights around that as well. The second one is conjoint analysis. Anybody do conjoint or heard of conjoint? Okay. How many people are in product-led growth companies? Yeah, a lot. So conjoint kind of fits into that domain. What you're doing with conjoint, you could either do like the A/B testing online or online testing, but conjoint is you do a survey-based approach. And what you're trying to figure out is how do people's choice, how do people change their choice for a certain package based on pricing and based on changing the features as well. So it starts to give you a good understanding about how much value they're putting on features. And after you go through some kind of mixed scenarios, you get a kind of a quantifiable mathematical solution on the back end that helps you make that decision around bundling and packaging and pricing. Next one is Van Westendorp. This is kind of good if you're trying to figure out that range. So if you have a chance to do some surveys, really Van Westendorp, the secret is kind of 4 questions that you ask. You get a nice little output here. You start to understand that range that your product can fit in. So especially if you have some add-on products and you're not sure how to price those add-on products, Van Westendorp can help you with that. And 3 other ones here. Monadic pricing, I like this one. You got 3 different groups. You ask the first one, what's your willingness to pay for $2.99, or what's your likelihood of buying at $2.99? The next group that you have in the survey, what's your likelihood to buy at $1.99? The next group, what's your likelihood to buy at $79? You start building a demand model around some of your pricing. So this one I like using Monadic. If you have a chance to do survey questions with customers, this one's a good one to throw in. It starts giving you some ideas around add-on pricing and modules. Gaber Granger, almost similar to the Monadic pricing. Sorry if this is getting too technical for people, but hey, these are good. This is part of your toolkit, right? So Gaber Granger, very similar to Monadic, but it's like you're just asking me a question. It's like, would you pay $90? Not really. How about 80? Not really. How about 70? Yeah, probably. Boom. Do that over 500 surveys. Now you got yourself another demand curve, and it's an optimization question at play again. So again, we're just trying to bring in some inputs into our pricing and packaging decision process here. Okay, and the last one I find really useful for B2B folks, especially if you do, like how many people get involved in RFPs, requests for proposals? Actually, that's a fair number of hands. So what we're doing with this one is we're trying to replicate that RFP selection process, right? So somebody's looking at about 4 vendors. They're going to look at you, they're going to look at somebody else, and they're going to score you, and they're going to score someone else. What we're trying to figure out is we're trying to replicate those selection criteria, that scoring process. What are the key features that they're interested in? How do we score relative to competitors? And we're quantifying our value. And so price is going to be part of that as well. So once you know your value score, you know your price score, you can start to determine, do we have an ability to do a price premium, or do we have to be price competitive? There's value buyers out there. A lot of people say we have to match the competition. You don't. I've seen when people go through this process here, sometimes you have value buyers. They're okay paying a premium to a certain extent, so your team can help try and figure out how much premium can we charge if it's a value buyer. Okay? Okay, so we got about 5 minutes here. The last, I'll talk a little bit about packaging metrics and tiers. So again, there's no silver bullet answer, unfortunately. It'd be nice if we had a little crystal ball to say, how am I supposed to price and package this? We don't have that, so we just have our process. And I find a lot of cases your approach can differ based on what type of solution you are. So you could be the mouse. Mouse is like the typical product-led growth consumer kind of products, right? It could be $5 per user, $20 per user per month, $49 per user per month, right? So it's a little bit of the mouse. You got a low ARR. You got to drive a heck of a lot of volume in this category. Typically good, better, best, bestest, maybe free, right? Next one's the rabbit. You got 500 to 10K. Next one's the deer. It's about 10K to 75K ARR. This is where your processes start to change, right? Like your sales teams might have some leeway around negotiation. So there's discounting. And then you get into the elephants. In the elephants, it's like you get into a lot of heavy RFPs, or you got some sales teams. There's a lot of negotiation that happens. So in terms of the packages that might be worth fitting into each of those categories, it depends on what kind of company you are, what industry you're in, and what the ideal approach would be. So one way that we can look at it is say, okay, well, do we want to start off with a all-in-one type packaging? Usually I see a lot of startups start here, right? we'll build it and we'll sell it. And then all of a sudden their product needs to evolve over time as they bring in different segments, so they try to find niche segments. So typically a lot of startups start here. Then you can evolve to a good, better, best. Maybe you start building out some very functional units, right? Oracle's really good at this. You have an HR module, you got a financial module, other modules as well. I call this part here, the functional difference between functional and modular. These can operate independently, but they can operate really well together if you buy them together. Versus modules where you need to have a core platform, and then you can build other capabilities on top of it that you would sell as modules. And then I'm seeing this a lot. You see a lot of B2B companies. There might be some big platforms that's already out there, but maybe there's something that you're really good at as a niche offering. And so your solution doesn't operate independently, but it integrates with some of these bigger platforms. So I'm starting to see this a lot. And then of course, APIs are coming out as well. And APIs are all about, I don't want to log into your software, but I'd love to have access to the data even John's solution, I don't know if you do APIs yet, but it's like, I don't want to log into your platform, but if you can just give me the data or I can do an API ping to your database, that's all, that's what I'm willing to pay for. So think through this as well. Like I find, especially in the product world, sometimes we build the product first and we try and figure out how to price and package it. Take a step back and figure out what's the ideal way that we want to package this so we can maximize how we're going to monetize our product going forward. So that's the big falter I see in the product community is build it first, let's figure out how to price it later. Flip it around. This is a big part of your build process. I've seen companies do this, and then it takes them 2 years because they should have done this. One company, they went up against Oracle, and they were losing deals because that was the packaging structure they had. And so they had to uncode it and recode it so that they could have independent, standalone components. Okay, almost wrapping up here. The next part is metrics. And I find a lot of cases, and even in enterprise, it's the fallback or the default seems to be a per user, but it might not be the best pricing metric for your product. And what I mean by that, one example was there's a company they did, basically they would look, anytime a healthcare company would send a feed to the insurance company in the US, their product would analyze it and look for errors and fraud. So imagine it picked up like an $80,000 hospital bill and said, hey, this doesn't look right. You shouldn't be paying out $80,000. I mean, that's a huge savings to that health insurance company. But the metric that they picked was per user, because that's all they knew. And they had maybe 3 or 4 users using this. I mean, imagine the savings they would have for like a large healthcare provider like United Health. Massive savings if they found a lot of errors. So they switched it up, and we used a variety of different metrics here. So in terms of the metrics, think about access. I call them access-based metrics or architecture-based. You see this a lot by like the Amazons of the world and Microsoft Azures of the world. Maybe content-based metrics or usage-based metrics. And then the others is, John briefly talked about this as well, outcome-based or even revenue share. So think about the ideal metric. There's another company they did, they're involved in the lending world, and so their software helps facilitate some lending from like, let's say retailers and the banks, and you'll go online to buy some furniture. Maybe you can click on their kind of lending app to help do some leasing on it. I mean, imagine getting a piece of that, but instead they were using subscription to the vendors that were using their product. And so migrating to revenue, once they migrated to a revenue share instead on every transaction they were a part of, I mean, the revenue shot up beyond what subscription could ever have done for them. So just some examples. In B2B, again, sometimes there's no silver bullet answer or one metric that is the one for you. Some companies like that insurance claim processing I was just briefly talking about there, they used a mixture of different metrics. Banks, maybe you use some different metrics as well. But here I'm just highlighting that, again, do some analysis around what's the ideal metric that makes sense for your product. You want something that's a good representation of the value that your product delivering, but it's also going to monetize your product as well. Okay. So that's it. So hopefully I planted the seed for a new framework and some tools that you can take back to your organization. And all the best. And hopefully you're starting off to be superstars in the digital pricing world. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, John, if you want to join us on stage. Okay. Okay, first, big round of applause for both presentations. Those were really stellar, guys. We've got a ton of questions, so we're gonna try and get through as many as we can. Just for everyone to know, you can upvote the questions that you want asked the most, so we'll be looking at them real time. So to start us off, how do you test pricing well? A/B tests have a limit on experimentation time, i.e. Firebase, and we may not see the conversions we want because of that time. What should they do?
I think the market research helps out, right? And there's market research has come a long way. There's a lot of platforms out there that can really help you get things going, like ASAP. So I've seen some market research programs get launched within like a week, 2 weeks. You got results within the second week. So again, it's not always perfect information, but what you're trying to do is that you can get some better information. So that conjoint analysis, for example, I mean, that's where you can test different packages at different prices with different features. And the input that you get back from that is a model where you can do indirect testing with those prices. That'd be yep.
So I'll say a couple of things. So first of all, your market research is only as good as your panel. So like you have to be really careful that you're getting it in front of the right folks. Otherwise, you're gonna get bad data. There's a couple of other things you can do. Obviously, A/B testing is good. You have to be careful and make sure you have enough traffic. What I've seen is some companies that operate globally will test in different geos. So they'll start off in one geo, see how the changes perform, and then sort of like if it performs in Australia, for instance, or Canada, they'll roll it out in the US. The other one is you can use PricingSaaS to learn from how others have done it. And if you look at the historicals, you can actually see what Monday has done, what Dropbox have done, what worked, what hasn't. So there's a lot of intelligence that you can learn from those companies.
Perfect. I love this next question. How can willingness to pay be tested? Can you provide examples for both B2B and B2C scenarios?
I knew this question was going to come up. So I think a lot of it depends on the stage of the company. If you're pre-market fit, if you're just like basically trying to figure out, are people willing to pay any money for this? And this is what like we've literally done with our product is like, you just put a price on it. It's like, okay, $99. Is somebody actually willing to swipe a credit card and pay any money? And then you sort of like start iterating. It's like, okay, what if I double that? Okay, will people still pay? And so you can sort of like start iterating and testing different scenarios. As you get bigger, like there's different methodologies. Again, like word of caution, it's only as good as the market. And the other thing you have to be careful when testing pricing is make sure you formulate the question correctly. And this can be really hard because if you think about it, a lot of times you're not just like, you're adding some new features. So you're like, okay, are you asking about the new feature pricing or the whole product? How do you explain what they're actually evaluating? So you have to be really careful when formulating the question. I'm sure you have a lot to say on this.
I agree. Yeah, I remember I used to work with a team of market researchers, and they were really good at. You can't just go out and say, "What would you pay for this product?" Right? So, the true testament to a good market researcher is how do you get around that question and get the answer that you're looking for. And usually, it's like if you've got, let's say, you're presenting a new value or you're trying to present a new product in the market research, you could ask, well, at a fair and reasonable price, would you purchase this product? So then you get your kind of baseline, and then the follow-up question is, okay, at $250, what's your likelihood that you would purchase this product? And it's not just a yes or no answer, but it's more kind of that bit of a range, and it starts giving you some ideas around, okay, what is that true? At least for B2B, that's kind of my area. What's that zone or that willingness to pay? So I find those kind of two techniques in the market research have worked well.
Great.
If you're lucky, they'll tell you.
You can also, like interviews are great as well. You can always ask what would be a fair price for this. However, people lie. It's like, yes, I'll pay $100. Then you build a product and you're like, okay, it's ready. And they're like, yeah, no. So until they actually put in that credit card or, sign that purchase order, you don't really know. There's multiple techniques, but again, like this is hard. Like I still find willingness to pay and actually price setting hard. One thing I've seen is a lot of companies will put a price, and I actually find the pricing metric, or like how you structure the pricing, is sometimes more important than the price point itself. Sometimes, like if you're doing per seat pricing, you pick a price, you can easily discount it. You can run a sale. You can sort of like see, like, is this actually driving more conversions? Okay, maybe this is a better price point. But again, like if you're better off not doing per seat pricing, maybe some, like doing outcome-based pricing, you really want to get that first. Again, changing the price point is easy. Changing the price structure is hard because it involves product changes. So pricing metric is probably more important than the price point, I would say.
That's great. I feel like we could probably stay a long time on that question, but we'll move on. What strategies do you recommend for effectively introducing and selling a paid add-on to, say, existing customers? So, maybe on the more communication side, things like that. Also, John, could you just hold your mic a little closer?
Okay.
A paid what? I sorry, I missed that.
A paid add-on to, say, existing customers. So,
I see.
dialing in.
So I'll speak to this question from the PLG perspective. So again, like for PLG companies. So with PLG companies, whether it's an add-on or you're trying to get somebody to upgrade, it's all about sort of like the experience. Like, how do you actually get it in their hands? One company that does this really well is HubSpot. If you use HubSpot, they sell you on a plan. And I'm a HubSpot customer, and then you try sort of like the next feature, and then you get this paywall. It's like, okay, you can upgrade, and they do a great job sort of like positioning it. It's like, okay, like here's the benefits, here's what you get. Sometimes they added video, and then you can click here to try for free for 30 days. So that whole experience, and this is sort of like what we help clients with, is like that buyer journey. It's like, hey, you really want to get it, make it easy for somebody to try it, and then convert it is key. The nice thing is with add-ons, especially in PLG, is you already have the customer's credit card most of the time. So the friction is actually much lower. So it's like, okay, Andrew, just try this feature. And then automatically after 30 days, we charge Andrew's credit card. Want to speak?
Yeah, sure. So in the B2B world, what I find helpful with add-ons is, if you have a chance to work with beta customers, have them use it, right? And what you're trying to determine is, like, your team knows what the value is, but what's the value perception with your customers? So if you can do some beta testing and then do some interviews after, and you can start getting some indicators around, what that value is and that willingness to pay is for that add-on as well. I find that that's quite helpful. In the absence of that, the other thing I've seen too is sometimes you got something so new that people don't know the value. So it's hard to put a price to it. So sometimes stage one of your new product or whatever new innovation you have, maybe you want to bundle that in just so that people start getting experience with it, and now they have a real, true perceived value. And then you can start carving that out and saying, okay, we've had a 3-month trial, we've included it for free, and then put it out as an add-on from there. But I think with B2B, you have a little bit more flexibility where you can work with your customers and take advantage of some of those longer term customers that can give you some good feedback.
Awesome. So this question actually kind of almost touches on the value-based pricing that you brought up in your presentation. And I can kind of see the pain in the question. How do you capture development cost in your pricing? If the product is in preliminary stages and however, what will have significant capacity over the next 3 to 5 years, I'm assuming by capacity they mean growth and sort of user base at the same time. So how would you recommend people approach the development cost, adding that in? Or not?
I'll take a crack at it. Customers don't care about your cost.
I was going to say the same thing.
They don't. So, but I get it though. Like, so I worked with this company called CGI, and what they would do is the CGI would build a solution for one enterprise customer, and then they'd say, okay, maybe we have something here. Let's commercialize this, take it to another one. The problem was customer number one bore the burden of all their costs, right? So it's like, how much development cost do we have? Well, if you look at software is like year one, your costs are way up here. Then year 2, maybe it goes down to here. Year 3, you put some investments in some new features, so it goes back up here. Your costs for your software do this over time. So if you're trying to figure out a cost plus approach, what are you going to be, cost plus 30% every year it's going to change? So that's the big challenge. What you want to do, and this is what I had to kind of, some challenges I had in my past, was the finance team is looking, saying, well, here's our cost. We need to make a 30% margin, right? But what we needed to do is do the value-based approach and say, hey, if we're going to commercialize a product, there has to be some initial investment years. We need to figure out what's that willingness to pay for various segments and what's the volume that's going to drive. So again, customers don't care about your cost. I didn't answer the question, though. I'm sure the person's going, please just answer the question. If you really need it, what I'd do, just lock arms with your finance team and with the tech folks. You can build out a cost model. But again, I mean, as pricers, try not to get caught in that trap because you might just get one customer and that's it.
Anything else on that one?
I'll just reiterate what Scott said. You know, like at the end of the day, your customers don't care how much you spent on building this software. Like they just don't. Like they care about what it does for them. So yeah, that's, you kind of have to swallow that cost.
So the next question, I think, could be somewhat generalized to startup experiences around pricing, but how to price a B2B SaaS product with new premium features where we have a small number of existing clients, under 20, but also trying to attract new clients. Might generalize this question a little bit to that, you know, how do you navigate adding premium prices when you're still perhaps in the product market or small number of customers? And I suppose there could be a small number of customers that are all very big too, so that would be a different option.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Yeah, I just asked you like 4 questions. I didn't give you no help in that. Okay. How would you recommend a B2B SaaS product with sort of new features approach increasing, say, pricing when they only have a small number of clients? So like a very small client group, how would you approach them experimenting when they only have a small number of clients in existing and they're trying to get new ones?
Yeah, so the nice thing about having a small group of clients is you can work very closely with them. It doesn't really scale when you have tens of thousands of clients. So like literally, you make them your partners, and you know, like you sort of like, you try to identify where does it actually deliver value to them. I was chatting with Andrew and Scott about PricingSaaS. So we collect a crap load of data. And there's like multiple ways to monetize this data. We sell sponsorships because we get in front of like the audience people we want to get rid of. We sell to PE firms. We sell to, you know, PLG companies like Calendly. And again, like our customer base is fairly small, but like we talk to them, and sometimes, you know, like they're just like, okay, we'll support you, like because you're helping us, we're helping you. So again, like, the nice thing with small number of customers, you can work really, really closely with them. That's what I would say. And then like, you sort of like start, you like, you can even ask them, like, it's like, is this worth to you? Like, would you pay for this? Like, you can really have those conversations. So again, like this really works well with small number of customers. And we've had some misses. We're like, oh, it's like, oh, they're gonna pay this and this. And it's like, no, that's basically you telling me that you're eliminating my job. I'm a pricing manager at Calendly. I'm not going to do that. So again, like we've had some assumptions, but again, because it's a small group of customers, you can really, really work with them closely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you've got 20 customers, hopefully they're close and they're partners. Those are the ones that can be your beta testers, and you can interview and ask them about the value and start testing some scenarios around pricing with them as well, and that willingness to pay. And
in most cases, like your customers know you have to make money. So it's like, it's okay to have those conversations. It's like, they want to help you too. So like, be just open with them.
Great. What would you say the best way to approach, to transition existing capabilities or features from being free to paid?
You can take away the freemium tier. I'm half joking. It's actually been happening a lot over the last 12 months. A lot of companies that we track have removed their freemium tier, especially like during this economic downturn. A lot of companies are removing it. to be honest, there's a lot of data you can look into. It's like, okay, where's the threshold? Like, so you can play around with limits. So again, like whatever metric you're using, so like you lower that metric until, so like, it's like, okay, the freemium users are hitting that metric, whatever it is, number of pages, number of whatever, and now they have to convert sooner. So metrics are your friends in that case. But again, like a lot of companies are basically just removing freemium, moving to trial-based or reverse trial, or just buy now.
Yeah, I agree. It's always an open question. Like, and what I find with some companies on the free is, well, we get like 10,000 customers that we could tap into from a marketing perspective, and they always cross their fingers hoping that there's going to be some conversions. So I guess that's what it comes down to is, well, what's that conversion rate? And in a lot of cases, it's like, Jesus, almost next to nothing. So we have this group of people that are using up a lot of our resources, and so it becomes a decision point of, well, let's take it out. All of a sudden, do we see people upgrading and saying, okay, I was willing to pay $5 or $10 per month anyway, so okay, so I'll upgrade that. So you got to avoid that. Some people look at free and say it's good enough for me, but they're also not just like tying up all of your company's resources and costs at the same time.
I like this question because it may touch on a few different sticky issues. How would you approach pricing in different geographies or juggling multiple different pricing models in different geographies?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, do you have another hour?
Again, I can speak from my experience because I monitor, and actually we did a study where we looked at different companies and how they price in different geos. So Monday.com, for instance, has localized pricing. And sometimes they have different feature sets as well. So it's like, in one geo they have, in the US, for instance, they'll have like SMS messaging, whereas they won't make it available in Canada. The good thing about like global pricing is you can actually, especially if you have a big footprint in different geos, you can test in different geos before you roll it out to your main markets. So again, like a lot of companies test in the UK, in Australia, in Canada before bringing it to the US. In terms of strategies, you can actually, simple trick. If you have VPN, you can literally sort of like take a look at how different companies, Intercom, Monday, etc., price their products in different geos. VPN into like UK, Australia, and you can see exactly what is the delta in pricing. This is one of the like our cheat codes is we actually monitor this data and we report on this. And you can sort of like, sometimes it's interesting. It's like, why is Mexico so much more expensive? And you can sort of like lean into it. So if you have competitors or sort of like competitive set, you can use that VPN trick, again, like VPN into different geos and sort of like see what the deltas are. Again, like you probably want to do it across multiple companies because again, like it doesn't mean just because Monday is doing this, they've done their homework. But again, like you can glean from that trick.
Yeah, at least for me in the enterprise space, I guess it comes down to like different segments have different value perceptions and different willingness to pay. And so sometimes in the enterprise space, that value perception can change dramatically from one country to the next. So I'll give you one example. Company, they had a digital solution in the transportation industry. And so for Switzerland, for example, Switzerland is like, in terms of digital advancement, is like way up here in terms of the maturity. But then other countries, if they were selling into Malaysia, not so digitally advanced, and their value perception was totally different. So they realized that the price points they would get in Switzerland weren't working in Malaysia. So we had to rethink a different packaging and structure approach for when we sold into different countries as well. So that's kind of, take a step back and just think value-based pricing. Do you have different value perceptions in different countries? And if you do, then maybe you have to have a different offering at a different price point within those countries. But you also have to gate it somehow so that the folks in Switzerland do not know anything about the pricing they get in Malaysia. And do not sell to Brazil. Anybody sell to Brazil, by the way? Yeah.
Yeah, is there a story there?
Oh, taxation, rules, regulations, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just making a joke. Sorry if I offend.
Well,
but I used to work at
come talk to
BlackBerry
Scott after
back in the
the,
day, and
session.
I remember we sold into Venezuela and Brazil, and oh my gosh, if you got locked into a contract and their currency changed, and holy cow, your company could lose money easily in some of those countries. So that's another food for thought, is even the currency fluctuations and hedging is a whole different game in the pricing world for different countries as well.
Okay, so we've got essentially one last question before we let everyone get to the bar and the food. Well, actually, I think the food's cleared out, but the bar's still open. Where do you think people should go if they've been inspired to start a new career on pricing? What are the best resources that you could recommend people to go to?
So to be honest, when I started like 2 years ago, that was like, I started going around my network. I'm like, can you tell me like where are all the pricing communities? It's like crickets. It's like there's like very, very little. There are sort of like mini sub communities. For instance, product-led growth that's run by Wes Bush. It's a large community. We have a channel there. We talk about SaaS pricing. There's like micro communities. I just joined one in like British Columbia, out of all places. There's like 6 of us, but we get together like every couple of weeks. I would say I've met a lot of people on LinkedIn I do a lot of like content, quick, rapid posts. People reach out to me. So LinkedIn is good. Reforge, actually, I found pretty good. So Reforge has a whole course on monetization. When you join Reforge, you get to be part of their Slack group, and they have like dedicated channels. So Reforge is good. I don't know, what else comes to mind?
Yeah, their Professional Pricing Society is really good. They're based out of Atlanta. That one I do a fair amount of work with. They usually have conferences twice a year. They haven't come to Canada though, but most of them are like, I think the next one's in Chicago. That's coming up fairly soon. And then there's a European pricing conference, pricing association as well. I think they're called IPA or something. They're starting to get bigger as well. So I find the Professional Pricing Society is pretty good in the US, but then IPA is pretty big in Europe.
And Scott, I think you had some slide with a few resources on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so even white papers or that Professional Pricing Society, they've got a lot of like webinars and content and stuff as well, and conferences. So they've been really good. They have been. It's interesting because they've been focusing. Like there's that actual pricing profession. You can go. That's how I started my career, was being a pricing analyst and then whatnot. But I find that the product community is slowly attending some of those events as well, which is good to see.
And the other thing I wanted to add is there are different pricing sort of like careers or roles.
Yep.
So Scott is obviously more focused on B2B enterprise, but there's like all kinds of you can do consumer product pricing. There's like hardware pricing. So there's a lot out there. In terms of like SaaS pricing, the other name that comes to mind is Kyle Poirier. So he's a partner at OpenView. He's fairly active on LinkedIn. He was in Ottawa last year. It was kind of cool to meet him. So follow him on LinkedIn. He publishes a lot of content. My co-founder runs a newsletter called Good, Better, Best. It's good. It's a good read as well. So you can subscribe to that. But again, like LinkedIn has been sort of like my best source of like connecting with other pricing professionals.
Awesome. Can I get please a massive round of applause for our 2 speakers? So that's it for our formal program tonight. So you're welcome to stick around, network, meet other people, pepper you guys with questions on all your things that we didn't get to on the Slido. We do ask if you've got a few seconds here, scan the QR code and give us some feedback. We're always looking for speaker ideas, different event concepts. We're looking to improve. We're a product organization at our heart, and we would love some survey responses. So the only other thing that we'd have to mention is that our next product event will be April 30th. And it's going to be around the relationship between being a product manager in sales-led organizations. It's not a conversation that we end up having a lot in the product community, at least publicly. It's a lot of PLG, but there's a whole crew of product managers in sales-led organizations. So we're going to be talking about that. Yeah, so thank you so much. Oh, one other thing, there's going to be a TPMA board member asking for a little bit of feedback one-on-one in this room. So Rhythm, if you want to put your hand up. If Rhythm comes up to you, he's going to be asking you a few questions and just getting your take on the event. So one last massive round of applause for Intuit and our speakers. Oh, okay. Oh, and we've got more food coming, so even another more round of applause. So thank you so much, everyone, and yeah, have a great night.